I hope you guys can't hear the gardener. Oh wait, actually the microphone is all the way up. Let's redo this. Structure provides a sense of security and allows you to optimize things for a certain purpose. So at the end of the day, structure is essentially just a more efficient slash effective way of achieving a certain goal, moving towards a certain end that you want to move towards, whatever that may be. Many young people nowadays lack structure because a lot of people my age and a little older, a little younger, have a bit of a just do what you like kind of mentality. They don't like a lot of old school societal norms. There are a lot of, things that are laid upon them by society that they don't subscribe to. But I think a big misconception is that just because you don't like a lot of things about a certain society, just because there are a lot of things that you don't want to adhere to, and just because you very individually want to go specifically your way, right? You want to find your own way in the world. You want to do what you want to do, that you can't have structure. So just because you do what you like doesn't mean you can't do it in a more effective way, essentially. You don't necessarily need an external structure to still gain the benefits of having structure in general. If you're going to do what you like, structure is a very powerful personal tool, or can be, to actually get what you like. Actually, go somewhere, achieve goals, follow your purpose, ideally. In this ideally very short video, because I don't have a lot of time today, I'm going to talk about how to structure your day-to-day life. Some of that is very individual, but I'm going to go into some things that I think generally you should utilize, generally you should apply to your personal structure. I'm going to talk about the way I structure my life currently a little bit, and the ways in which that works quite well. And yeah, let's just get into it. So I would split structure for your personal life into 3 parts, first of all. Short-term, mid-term, and long-term structure. Short-term structure is what happens within a single day, maybe today and tomorrow, because depending on what you do today, that might influence tomorrow immediately, like when you go to bed, things like that. But generally speaking, short-term structure is focused on what is going on right now, today, just within this day from when you get up to when you go to sleep. Depending on who you are, it might be even shorter, right? You can sleep twice a day. You might take like a long nap, a several-hour nap in the middle of the day. Maybe short-term structure is just half a day for you. We'll get to that in a little bit. I'll talk about that a little bit as well. But yeah, generally what happens in a day, that's short-term structure. Everything you have to get done, everything you want to get done, everything you don't want to get done today. Midterm structure is a week to about a month, and then long-term structure is several months, a full year, several years in some cases. Really depends on the types of goals you have, and at that point, what kind of person you are, maybe how old you are as well, things like that. As I said, these lengths may vary a little from person to person. It does depend on who you are and how you perceive time. If you have listened to this video in its entirety and you feel like the things I talked about may, in your case, be better applied to shorter or longer time spans, that may very well be the case. I'm talking about generally the typical type of person here. This is what I've found over the years works best for me as well, even though, sometimes I'm a little more short-sighted. Sometimes I'm a little more long-sighted in regards to the structure I'm going to talk about. This is like the best happy middle, if you will. Things like attention span in particular can very much influence a person's perception of time. So if you feel like a day is already like midterm structure for you, you might want to get off social media and stop scrolling so much, because that can really like keep you very focused on the moment and on every single minute. Now, why are all three important? Why do you need short-term, midterm, and long-term structure? Short-term structure keeps you productive and focused on the current moment. So this is the most important for immediate productivity in the sense of actually doing stuff, getting things done. And also the most important in terms of not constantly being focused on the future, but actually living in the moment, actually being here right now, doing the work you got to do, but also having the fun you should have, enjoying yourself. Because if you don't have short-term structure, but you do have midterm and or long-term structure, what can happen, and I know this because I've actually personally tested this as well, is say you have a plan for the week or for the month of things you have to get done, and you get a few things done in a day. What you might think is either, number one, I'm not nearly done with all the things I have to do, so I should do more. And you can completely overwork yourself. Number two, you don't really get to enjoy the rest of the day. So this can happen, for instance, if you have a plan for the week and there's like 3 or 4 tasks you have to do every day. Once you've done those tasks, because you only have a plan for the entire week, you're essentially done for the day, but you don't really feel like you've accomplished much. So you might feel the urge to just get this day finished as quickly as possible, to go to bed, to wake up and, keep going. In any case, you're either going to be very dissatisfied with what you've accomplished in a day, or you're not going to be able to focus on having the fun you should have, again, in that day, because you're not done. So it's kind of a short-term structure allows you to be satisfied with a day's work, if you will, and also, make sure you actually get something done as well. Long-term structure makes sure the productivity we assure with short-term structure, because again, short-term structure is about getting things done today, and then also being done for today and enjoying today. And so ensuring that in the midterm, we can keep going. We can be productive every single day, get something done every single day. But because we're not doing too much and because we're not doing too little, we're getting somewhere, but we're also having fun. And that allows for us to keep going every single day. So if you do just the right amount every single day, that allows for longevity, which is going to make you very productive. Long-term structure makes sure that this productivity actually serves its purpose, right? Because we're talking about you doing something you want to do, doing what you like. Was a little bit of a provocative way of phrasing it. Obviously, ideally, if you've watched previous videos of mine, you should have a personal purpose that you follow, goals that you strive for. And if we're talking productivity, that's obviously what you want your productivity to be geared towards, the things you actually feel are important to you, the things you actually want to get done. So long-term structure is setting goals, again, for several months, a year, multiple years, that actually make sure you're going somewhere, because you can do a lot every single day and not be going anywhere, right? This is actually the case, I believe, with most people who work a regular job. They may have dreams, they may have aspirations, but they're just working some job to make ends meet. And the problem is, because all they are thinking about, in many cases, not in every case, there are definitely people who work regular jobs who are happy with that. But in many cases, all they are thinking about is, I have to get the work done, so I get paid, right? So, I can pay my rent and buy food and stuff like that at the end of the month. And so the ultimate goal of the work they are doing is in and of itself relatively short term, or in our case, midterm, it's the end of the month, but they are not actually laboring towards any meaningful long-term goal. And so they are working every day, and they are doing a lot of work, potentially, but they are not going anywhere in life they really want to go, because they are not doing any work to get to the place in life where they want to go. They are just doing work, and they're getting paid for that work, but it's not work in the service of their dreams and ambitions and goals. And so they are never going to get where they want to get because they're not doing what they need to do. That's what long-term structure is for. You need long-term goals, ideas of, what you actually want to achieve, so that in the short term, you can do the type of work that you maybe need to do to survive, right, to make ends meet, but you can also make sure that every single day you get something done that progresses you towards where you want to be long term, or what you want to achieve, what you want to get done. Midterm structure kind of connects the two, right? So we got overarching goals that are immediately connected to your purpose, your dreams, ideally. And we got structure for every single day, right? To be productive, to have a little bit of fun as well, to ensure that we can keep working towards our long-term goals day in, day out. And midterm structure is essentially a bridge between these tasks at hand and your overarching goals. Because without it, the problem is your overarching goals and what you do in a single day are very, very far apart in terms of scale, right? One of them is very big, very grand. One of them is like a tiny little speck within that. And if you don't have something in between in terms of levels, in terms of scale, what can happen is you work very, very hard every day. Not too hard, again, right? Ensuring some level of longevity, just hard enough so you can keep going again the next day. But you don't feel like you're getting anywhere. And maybe you work very, very hard for a month or 2 months, and then you feel like you've got nothing done. You have not gotten any closer, really, to achieving those goals, and you maybe fall off. And that's where midterm structure is really important. You want tasks / goals, however you want to phrase it, for the week. You want tasks / goals for the month. Because when you've worked for a couple of days, you might feel like, oh, this was kind of tough. I'm a little down in the dumps. But then you look at the week and you're like, oh, I've almost finished everything I got to do for the week. Ideally, the first couple of days in the week are the ones where you work the most. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday maybe. And then you do a little less work towards the end of the week. Maybe you have a kind of a free day with Sunday, something like that, or a day where you don't work as rigorously, or maybe you don't have a fixed list of tasks. You just do what you feel like, and when you're done with that, you enjoy your day. Whatever it may be, I think in most cases it makes sense to kind of taper off towards the end. And so if you've had a couple of really, really tough days, you can look at your midterm structure and be like, hey, the hardest part of the week is done. I just got to do this, this, and this, and then I'm done for the week, and I can chill out, and I can relax for a bit. Same goes for the month as well, right? If you're 2 weeks into a month and you're feeling down in the dumps, you may look at the goals you want to achieve this month and be like, I'm halfway there. Or maybe even more. Maybe you've worked very hard in the second week, say, and you've achieved a significant amount of what you wanted to achieve in that month. So that can really keep you going. And then when you're done with a month or 2 months and you've accomplished this, that is already significant enough in the grand scheme of things. If we're talking about goals you set for several months, half a year, to where you can actually detect progress. You're like, I got everything I wanted to get done in this month done, and in this second month as well. That's 2 months out of, 6 that I've already aced. And maybe I've gotten so much done in these 2 months that I can chill out a little bit. I don't have to work as hard for the next 4 months. Whatever it may be, you can see a significant progress. You've already achieved 30% of what you wanted to achieve, if we're talking about half a year, right? So generally what I'm saying is you want this very, very short-term structure to make yourself productive, to actually do stuff every single day. You want it to serve your long-term goals, to actually move you towards your dreams, further you in your purpose. But you also want something in between that allows you to not completely fall off because you feel like you're not getting anywhere. Because the work you do in a day is essentially nothing if you look at the grand scheme of things, but every single day matters. The work you do every single day matters. And so ideally you have levels in between those long-term goals and that short-term structure to ensure that you actually see that it matters. Because a day, if we look at a year, is nothing. A day in a week, that's a seventh of the week, right? So essentially you just want to kind of create levels that move all the way up from your short-term structure to your long-term structure. I think I've made this very clear now, so that you can see your progress on every single level and feel like you're actually moving forward, which is going to motivate you, but it's also just going to allow you, even when you're not super motivated, to keep going, because you can actually tell that what you're doing is doing something. All right, I think I've talked quite extensively about why all 3 levels are important. Now let's get into actually creating this structure and implementing it into your life. I recommend starting by thinking about long-term structure, which is your overarching goals that are ideally tailored to your specific purpose, your dreams. And so they are kind of what constitutes the other two, the midterm and the short-term structure. Because there's no point in creating a short-term structure that does not serve your purpose. So you should set those goals first. Really think about, what do I want to achieve? What's realistic to achieve in, say, a year? I'd start with something like that, and then move downward from that. However, it can be a lot harder to judge what you are able to accomplish in a year. So maybe start by taking it easy on yourself. Start with something you know you can achieve in a year, and then you can up that as time goes. So if you've never made, I'm not talking about general resolutions, like we're not talking about New Year's resolutions here that you stick to for like 3 months and then you fall off. This is a goal for the year that you have to get done. This is not like I'm going to try to do this in a year. No, that's your task for the year. That's your job. That's what you got to get done. Start with something. If this is your very first time setting a goal like that, start with something you know you can achieve, and then you can up the ante after a couple of months. If you're 5 or 6 months into the year and you are thinking to yourself, this is too easy, I'm easily going to get this done, you now already have a bit of a judgment of how productive you are, generally speaking, because half the year is already behind you. So try to make a bit of a judgment on how much more you could do and adjust for that. That would be my recommendation. Generally speaking, in the future, I do not recommend adjusting what you need to get done in a year. You can do more if you want to, but you should have a fixed goal, and once that goal is reached, you have achieved it. And you should revel in that, and you should be satisfied. And you can do more, absolutely, if that's what you want to do. But make it clear to yourself that that is extra. You are being a G. You are being a badass by doing that extra bit. That was not intended, and you don't have to do it. Okay, because it's very important to set goals, and those goals can be hard to achieve, but then also be satisfied when you achieve them. Appreciate that, appreciate yourself, appreciate your success, and then set new goals, right? But don't push the goalpost every time you get close to it. That can be very disheartening in, the mid to short term, mid to long term, rather. You get what I'm saying. Anyways, now I've lost my string of thought here. So once you have a goal in mind, and for now this can just be for the next year. I'm saying just for the next year because me personally, I have an extensive plan of books I want to write, or rather need to write, in the next 10 to 20 years. Now, I haven't written this plan down because things come and go, things change, but generally speaking, I have a very clear vision of specific books that I'm going to write over the course of this period. So that's very long term, obviously. You don't have to think that long term if you don't know what you actually want to achieve that long term. I'm very clear on that. I know very specifically what I want to do in the next 20, 30 years. That might not be you. And that is totally fine. Let's just start with a goal for the year. Maybe even the next 6 months, right? Something like that. Once you have that, let's move on to a midterm and short-term structure. Again, ideally, you can split up what you want to get done in, say, a year into months. This is roughly how much I should get done every month. Then for every month, you can split that up into, this is roughly how much I should get done every week. And this doesn't have to be the same, by the way. Doesn't have to be the same every month. Doesn't have to be the same every week. You can, make a rough estimate of, on average, this is how much I should get done in a month. But you can also be specific about it and say, I'm going to work very hard in these months because maybe I don't have school or work or university, whatever it may be, in these specific periods of time. And I'm going to work less hard in these months. You can actually be specific about that. Go about that as you will. Same goes for the weeks, obviously. You might want to just have a rough average of how much you should get done every week, but maybe you also want to be specific and say, I'm going to work a lot harder for the first 2 months, first 2 weeks of a month, rather, and a little less hard for the last 2 weeks. Or I'm going to work hard for the first 3 weeks and then basically not work at all for the last week or whatever it may be that you prefer, okay? The general idea here is, once you've done that, to create your short-term structure, adjusted to that. You have either a general goal or a specific goal for the week, and now you want to create a short-term structure that allows you to reach this goal. Essentially, the idea is to create a cohesive system where completing all tasks in a day will allow you to achieve your weekly goals. So if you get everything done that you've planned for a single day, every single day of the week, you achieve the goal you have for the week. And if you achieve the goal you have for the week, every single week, you achieve what you want to achieve for the month, etc. All the way to your long-term goals. So your structure, or the different levels of your structure as a whole, should, slide into each other smoothly. It doesn't make sense, obviously, if you work hard every single day and you aren't able to achieve your weekly goal, because it's just not achievable. That just doesn't work. That's actually going to be very disheartening. So I recommend you make sure that's not the case. If you split up your long-term goal into, midterm goals for specific months, or, just generally, this is how much I should get done in a month, and then this is how much I should get done in a week, and you realize that's kind of a lot to do in a week. I don't know if I can do that. And not like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. I'm talking about, you actually are not that confident that even if you work very hard and really push yourself, you're able to accomplish that. You might have to go a little less hard on yourself in terms of your goal for the year. Maybe it's a little bit too much. Maybe you have to start a little softer. The details of the specific structure you are going to implement are going to depend highly on you personally. This is something that's very individual, because people, have different preferences when it comes to things like consistency. Some people like to work really, really hard for a shorter period of time and then relax a bit and then work really, really hard again. Other people like to work a little bit every day. I'm more of the first type. I like to go all in with the stuff I do. I like to really work or really relax. I'm not a big fan of doing things halfway. But especially if we're talking about a whole month or several months or a year, people are very different in this regard, do have different preferences, and even though those might change over time, ideally, if you're going to implement a structure now, it's going to be one that is actually going to make you productive. So it should be tapered to you specifically. So because this can be so individual, I'm just going to talk about a few different things that your structure should typically include, more general aspects of especially short and midterm structure. And then I'm going to go into what I currently do to maybe inspire you a little bit, give you an idea of what a plan for personal structure can look like. And if you're really uncreative or, not in the mood to structure your own life, you can also just straight up follow what I do if that's what you want to do. Whoa, what's this? Sudden change of clothes? So the video you have been watching so far was recorded about 2 or 3 days ago. Actually, no, a little longer than that. 4 days, I believe. Since then, as you can tell by my face, which in the meantime has aged by about 1,000 years, I have had a lot of work on my plate. So I only got to editing this video this morning. I just rolled out of bed. Only to realize that a good chunk of the video, not too much, but like a significant bit, had just not been recorded. The recording apparently just stopped on its own. Maybe I accidentally hit the hotkey, I don't know. Anyways, I guess we're back. I'm going to finish the rest of the video today. I got a pretty good idea of where I left off. All right, let's go ahead and talk about what your 3 different types of structure should typically include. Generally speaking, your short-term structure should include a wake-up and possibly a bedtime. These can be fixed, a little bit more loose. I'll say something about that in a minute. As well as measures to make sure you can stick to those and get good sleep as well. So when and how much caffeine are you drinking throughout the day? When and how much are you eating, drinking? When are you working out in the day, etc. I talked about all of these things in 2 previous videos on sleep, where I covered the entire topic of sleep to a decent level of extensiveness. So if you're interested, generally speaking, or specifically because of what I just said, in the topic of sleep, I'm just going to put them somewhere up here and you can go check them out. The first video is about why you should sleep, the detrimental effects of not sleeping enough, things like that. Second video, in-depth guide on how to sleep well specifically. You should also include what you need to get done in a day, but at the same time set a clear upper limit. What I mean by that is essentially you have a minimum level of what you should get done in a day. What will make you feel some level of satisfaction with what you've achieved. There's also an upper level to how much you should get done in a day that still allows you to be productive the next day. Unless the next day is Sunday and you have Sunday planned as your day where you do nothing, but you get the idea, right? Generally speaking, it's just a regular day in the week, say. You want to be able to be decently productive the next day. So there should be a lower and an upper limit for what you want to get done in a day. To give you an example from my personal short-term structure, which we are also going to go into with a little bit more detail later on, I essentially have 3 different categories of things that I have to get done in a day. And within each category, there's one larger task and then a smaller task or multiple smaller tasks. But the larger tasks specifically is usually set to take anywhere between 1 and 2 hours. So those are my lower and upper limit. With all 3 categories together, that's somewhere in between 3 to 6 hours for all of these different things. And that essentially allows me to get them done every single day, unless there are some, special circumstances. I need the entire day to do something. Obviously, that can happen. But usually, you will have 3 to 6 hours to get stuff done every day, especially when this obviously includes, to a significant degree, things I consider work. However, 3 to 6 hours every day for these larger tasks, and then maybe like 2 to 3 hours for all of the smaller tasks combined together, still allows me to do this every day. It's not like I'm really overworking myself, like I really have to hustle hard to get this done. And what that allows for is essentially a very consistent productivity. I keep improving on the things I want to improve. I keep putting in work into the things I want to put work into without overworking myself to an extent where the next day I'm just completely spent. Next, we have the midterm structure, which is already going to be a little bit looser than the short-term structure. A midterm structure should generally include fixed times where you work more and where you work less throughout the week and month, because that's what most people prefer. Obviously, you might be someone potentially who likes to do the same exact amount of work every single day, but I'd say generally speaking, that doesn't go for most people. And there are, in fact, people who like a very steep taper, who like to do a lot of work at once and very little work after that. I would count myself probably somewhere in the latter category. So I actually prefer doing things properly, if you will. So working properly and then relaxing properly. There are people who like a little bit more balance than I do. Generally speaking, most people like something like a weekend or even just a Sunday to relax. And that's something you should include in your structure. So have a clear sense of how much you work when in the week. And this can be, I do the same amount of work of what I just talked about for short-term structure every single day of the week, Monday to Sunday. This could be, I do that 5 days a week. Then maybe I do a little bit of that on Saturday and no work at all on Sunday. You could be doing more on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then a little bit less on Thursday and Friday, etc. You get the idea, right? The way you taper this or don't taper this can be very individual, but that is something you should be specific about. That is something you should actually specify. Same thing obviously goes for the month. So maybe you want to work equally hard every single week, but I suppose most people would probably prefer something like 3 weeks of fairly decent, like hard work, and then a 4th week that is a little bit more chill, or maybe 4 weeks of working hard and then a kind of 5th week that goes into the next month of relaxing, something like that. Maybe you like to work very hard for 2 weeks and then a little less hard for the 3rd week and then a little less hard again for the 4th week, but you do work every week. Again, that's very individual, but the idea is that you should have a concept for this, ideally. You should also have general goals that are to be achieved, and you don't have to have these for both the week and the month, although you can. Me personally, I usually set longer goals, so I typically set more like monthly goals. In some cases, I don't even do that. I set a goal for like every 2 months, something like that. But that specifically is to do with the kind of work I do. So a different kind of goal setting might be ideal for you. For instance, for my training, if we're not talking about work, but about working out, I do set goals usually for about a month, in some cases even for a week, 2 weeks. If I have a very rigorous regiment, I might just set the goal of pulling through for 2 weeks and not skipping any workouts. You get the idea. Again, this is going to be very individual to you, but you should have a concept for your goal setting in this kind of time frame, in this kind of level of your structure. And then, of course, ideally, you again want to aim for some type of sustainability. You don't want to crash at the end of the month and ruin the next one. So you should think about how much work can I do in a week, realistically, to still be able to work the next week? How many weeks like this can I do in a month without ruining the next month? Have a concept for that. Maybe try it out if you've never really structured your life like this. Just do some experimentation and you'll figure out, okay, this is maybe a little less than I'm able to do in a week. Maybe I can do more than this. Or that was a pretty intense week. I cannot, I think, replicate that 3 times in a row throughout a month. Now, your long-term structure is going to be very individual, so I can't say a lot about this. However, generally, I recommend just having a few overarching goals every year and an even longer term plan for projects, goals that take a very long time. So there should be a couple of things you want to get done every single year. And I'm not talking about like New Year's resolution type things. I might have talked about this actually in the video before, but since I recorded it like 4 days ago, I have no fucking idea. So I'm just going to say this again, I guess, if I've said it before. You don't want to have some general idea, New Year's resolution type goals. Oh, this is what I want to do this year. No, we are talking about serious goals. We are talking about tasks. This is what you are going to get done this year. And then when you're done, you're going to start thinking about what your goals for the next year are going to be. And as soon as New Year's is over, you're going to set those goals and get those done next year. So we don't want some really vague idea of get better at this or something of that sort. We actually want a specific goal here. Generally, this is going to be multiple goals because ideally you should be looking at things like training, things like, your personal work, your personal purpose, whatever that may be. Different types of avenues in your life. So maybe have like 3 or 4 different goals for the year. These are going to be specific. That doesn't mean they have to be insanely hard and you have to work your ass off the entire year. They should be, not too easy. You shouldn't be wasting time all year. But if you don't really know what you're capable of doing in a year, maybe start with 6 months. Set a goal that you think you can achieve. And if you're at 4 months, 5 months, and you've already achieved the goal, or you're very close to achieving it, and you feel like, I didn't work very hard, I didn't have to work hard to get here, then you can up the ante. So if you've never set concrete goals like these that you have to achieve in a year, and it's kind of tough for you to figure out what would be an adequate level, start with 6 months. Start with something you're fairly certain you can achieve. Maybe up that by like 5%, 10%, 15%. And then just get going and see where you land. And if that was too hard, maybe reduce that a little bit, or double the goal, then reduce it a little bit for an entire year. If it was way too easy, maybe increase that a little bit. But after these 4 or 5 or 6 months, if that's how long it actually took you to achieve the goal, you will have at least a little bit of an idea of what you're capable of in a year. And your goal setting will get better every single year. And then obviously, as I mentioned before, there are some projects, some goals, some plans, some dreams that take a very long time to achieve. Certainly longer than a single year. So create maybe like a slightly more vague plan for those. It can still be very specific, but for a lot of people whose circumstances in life are changing quite a bit, especially if they are actively improving on themselves, that can be tough. So you don't have to be super specific about what you're going to be doing for the next 5 to 10 years, but I do recommend you have like a vague plan. So now that I've actually already transitioned in some bits into what I personally do, I'm just going to talk specifically about what my structure looks like for the day, for the week, typically the month, the midterm range, and then the long-term range. I've already talked about the long-term a little bit here, so let's just start with that. My long-term structure is I do have a specific goal, in many cases multiple specific goals for the year the most prominent one is what I want to get done in a year, writing-wise. I've talked about this a few times in the past. I consider writing to be kind of part of my core purpose, what I do. So in terms of work, that is the most important thing to me. And I will have essentially a very clear list of things that I'm going to write or edit in a year. Like this chapter, I'm going to finish this book, I'm going to write this chapter, I'm going to write this chapter, and I'm going to edit this chapter that I've already finished, or one of these chapters that I'm going to write throughout this year, that sort of thing. I typically have an idea of what I want to achieve throughout the year in terms of working out. So I know the different plans I want to go through, the different phases of working out I want to go throughout a year. However, I don't really have a final goal for, what I'm going to bench or anything like that at the end of the year. So it's more about these are the different mesocycles, if you will, I want to go throughout this year, roughly speaking. And then again, in terms of long-term structure, I have a pretty decent vision of where I want to go, generally speaking. So beyond my specific designs for the year, I do have a very good idea of what I'm going to be doing next year and the year after that, etc. However, I do restrict that to the things that are most important to me, because other things might change. My interests may change, not, my purpose, my work that is most important to me, that's not going to change to a significant degree. But other things about my life can certainly change. I'm going to ideally keep improving as a person. I might move somewhere else, right? I might get disinterested with smaller aspects of my life that to some degree shape the life I have right now. And so the only thing I really do long-term planning for is the things I want to do in life, the things that are genuinely important to me. And everything else I don't really plan for that much. I have like a rough idea. I might do this, I might do that. I have some general concepts. But usually, and people who know me know this, if I talk about things that are not of real importance to me, anything long-term I'm talking about is essentially just me joking around and fantasizing. I'm not being serious, because I don't really care about most aspects of my life that don't pertain to my purpose. My midterm structure is fairly simple as well, I'd say. On the month kind of level, I usually mainly have goals for working out, because that's roughly how long I stick to one run, if you will, one specific regiment. I typically work out for about 4 weeks, and then I rest for a bit and get back to it, or maybe I change the plan. This can be longer than a month. Really depends on various different circumstances, what I'm doing at the moment, whether I have a lot of work, stuff like that. But a month is usually kind of my frame for working out, and for working out with a specific regiment. As I mentioned before, I'm generally a big proponent of doing things properly, if you will. So working proper hard and then relaxing properly as well. What I usually do is, during the times where I'm focused on really properly, again, sticking to my training regiment, I will also try to do everything else as properly as possible. So typically, within a month, I will do about 4 weeks of sticking to my training as perfectly as possible, trying to eat as cleanly as possible, working hard, right? So we'll get into my short-term structure in a minute, but essentially trying to stick to my short-term structure as perfectly as possible. And then I do a 5th week typically of kind of chilling out, relaxing, doing stuff I feel like doing. I will still do work even when I'm just chilling out. I think one of the key things about this is that I do not spend as much time with other people as I used to in the past. And so a lot of the things I do in my free time are actually closely related to my work, because my work is something that's very important to me and interesting to me. And so the kind of things I do in my free time are typically kind of like that anyways. They're either tangentially related or they're actually part of my work. So it's not like I'm not being productive at all in that 5th week, but I'm not focused on being productive. I just do what's fun. That's typically what my structure looks like. So it's a little longer than a month, kind of reaches into the next month usually. But yeah, that's what works for me so far. My weekly structure is actually pretty simple. I'm going to pull up my alarm system here so I don't get anything wrong. But yeah, essentially my weekly structure consists of 2 parts, and one of those is just a specific alarm system. What I like to do is I really like to front load my weeks. I like to do most of the work early in the week, especially the types of tasks that are external to an extent. For me, that's university right now. Those are the kinds of things I really like to do in the first half of the week. So I actually set my courses when you pick the different courses that you are going to attend throughout a semester. I actually picked those to mainly be on Monday and Tuesday. And then I have 1 course on Wednesday and 1 course on Thursday, but they are late in the day. So I can, get everything done that I want to get done, and then later in the day head to university for the course. So I'm going to go through my alarm system here so you get essentially an idea of how this works. So on Monday and Tuesday, I get up at 6. I try to get a decent amount of work done, stuff like what I'm doing right now. It's a Tuesday today. And ideally, I get a workout in before I go to university. Head to university. That's a pretty decent chunk of the rest of my day. And then when I get home, or even on the way home, I try to get some of the other stuff done that I do in a day. On Wednesday and Thursday, I get up at 8. So already from Tuesday to Wednesday, I have like a 2-hour push, if you will, where I have a little more time in the day. I can do a little bit more. And also it just feels a little relaxing, if you will, because I usually get tired early on Tuesday and I'll go to bed earlier, but it feels kind of relaxing to know I have that buffering time, if you will, at the back end of the day, and I can sleep a little bit longer on Wednesday. On Wednesday and Thursday, I do like the major amount of my personal work that I want to get done throughout the week, because again, I only have 1 university course each, and it's at the very end of the day or late afternoon. So I get most of my work done. I do a workout, all of that good stuff. I eat most of the food I have to eat in a day, and then I head to university. On Friday, I get up at 8:30. So this is essentially the latest I want to get up on any regular day. If you've seen my sleep videos, which again, I highly recommend, already linked them, go check them out. I talked about getting up before 9 a.m. So 8:30 is kind of already pushing it. Friday, already a bit of a relaxation day. I get everything done I need to get done on Friday. I absolutely stick to my short-term structure. Again, going to talk about that in a minute. But I can, on Friday, feasibly stay up as long as I want. That's kind of my start into the weekend. So still getting up early, still doing everything I need to do, but I don't have any university courses. So I have a lot of time on Friday to get my stuff done. And then typically I'll meet with friends on Friday night and I can stay up as long as I want. Although, usually because I've been up since 8:30, I will get tired, at maybe 1 or 2 a.m. Go to bed. Saturday, no alarm. I get to sleep as long as I want, and I get to stay up as long as I want. However, on Saturday, I also stick to my short-term structure. So Saturday is kind of the freest in terms of, I can sleep in until any time I like. I can stay up as long as I want, but I still have to get all of my work done, which is obviously very doable. There's nothing to do on Saturday except for my work. And if I can stay up as long as I want, it's absolutely doable. And Saturday still feels like a very chill day to me, despite this fact. We'll usually meet with a friend on Saturday night as well. And then Sunday, I do have an alarm, but it's for 10 a.m. So it's very chill, very relaxed. You can tell by what I just said about 9 a.m. I don't consider Sunday to be a serious work day, if you will. And this alarm is essentially just to make sure I don't get up so late that, again, what I talked about, in terms of sustainability, my next week is going to be ruined by that fact. So if I go to bed very late on Saturday and I wake up at 10, maybe I've had a little less than 8 hours of sleep, I'm usually totally capable of going to bed fairly early on Sunday and then waking up at 6 a.m. on Monday. Sunday is the only day of the week where I do not do anything from my short-term structure. I basically just chill out. I use Sunday typically to do some work at home, some housework, wash the dishes, stuff like that, and just, relax, meditate, take some long walks in nature, that sort of thing. And that's essentially my weekly structure. So it consists of the alarms, the wake-up system that I myself have, which, is very personal, very individual. Some people might prefer waking up at exactly the same time every single day. For me personally, because I know there are things on the weekend that I want to do, and there are days where I want to stay up late, I've just tried to incorporate that as well as possible into a week that has a fairly regulated wake-up time and bedtime, essentially, and to kind of cater to that, because that's not something I want to lose. It's not like I'm going out partying, by the way. Maybe that's an important note as well. I am doing things that feel very important to me. I'm meeting with friends, but we're not, just hanging around and not doing anything. We're actually doing stuff together. Those are not really things I want to miss, at least at this current stage in my life. But I should obviously adjust for the fact that that's typically what I do on a weekend. And so I have, on one hand, these wake up and bed times, and then on the other hand, the question of essentially, am I going to work today or not? All right, let's talk about short-term structure before we end this video, because I've been, I just looked at the time and I've been recording for quite a while again. So, short-term structure, I'm actually going to just pull up the document here to talk about it. As I mentioned before, I have essentially 3 different categories that I have to do tasks in every single day. These 3 different categories are create, learn, and train. And this is something I've actually seen multiple other creators talk about in the past. I consider these 3 things to essentially be part of what a good like high quality man is, you should practice all three of these things on a regular basis, in my opinion, to kind of be well-rounded and really just have a decent foundation as a man. So as I mentioned before, in each of these categories, I have one larger task that takes usually somewhere in between 1 and 2 hours. For the create category, that's 1 to 2 hours of what I call true work, which is not working for money, not working to sustain myself, but the kind of work that follows my purpose. Obviously, you can follow your purpose and earn money doing that. That is actually the ideal scenario. But what I mean is, I'm not talking about a job specifically that earns money. So I'm not talking about working at a cafe or something like that, which would be a job that only earns you money and doesn't follow your purpose. True work to me is the kind of work that actually furthers my goals, right? Attempts to move me towards my dreams, follows my purpose again. In the learning category, the main task is 1 to 2 hours of what I call classic learning. So this is going to be either reading or university. If I have university on a day, that's fine. That's enough. That's usually 90 minutes or more if I have several courses. If I don't have any university, I'm going to be reading for 1 to 2 hours. And then for the train section, my 1 to 2 hour task is obviously just going to be the training session that I have planned for that day. So either a strength workout or something agility or endurance related for usually somewhere in between 1 to 2 hours. Or not usually, that's how long my workouts take. That is generally the largest part of my short-term structure, these three things. Of course, sometimes there is something like an appointment, something of that nature that you have to get done specifically on a specific day. But generally speaking, this is what I do every day except for Sunday. Then there are smaller tasks that comparatively don't take up as much time. I'm going to give you some examples here. So from the create section, for instance, I also do 15 to 45 minutes of some form of music creation. I will either play songs. You can tell I have a guitar here. I'm a decent singer, I would say. And so I will either play some songs, right, sing some songs, or I will write some songs. Ideally, that's what I want to do, but some days I don't have the time or the energy to write something. So I will just play some songs, practice playing a little bit, that sort of thing. From the learn section, for instance, I have 15 to 45 minutes of language practice every day. So right now I'm learning Norwegian. I'm going to brush up on my Spanish next, which has gotten a little rusty. And then long term, I want to be learning Russian. So I already have several languages in store that I want to learn. And yeah, to accomplish that, I do a little bit of language practice every day as well. And then also in the learn category, I have, this has no specific time, but I have as a task studying my personal code, my credo. If you want to know more about that, I also made a video about creating your personal code. So there's no time limit on that. I can do that just for a little bit. I actually have my code recorded as an audio, what do you call it? An audio file on my phone, so I can listen to it like a podcast when I'm on the road. That's a task as well that I do a little bit of that every day. And then in the training section, apart from physical training, I have things like 3 games of chess every day to essentially stay alert in the mind department, the mental department. And then I've also written down compensating activity for the specific workout I do. So if I do a strength workout, I want to be doing some things that benefit my agility and benefit my endurance throughout the day. If I do an endurance workout, strength and agility should be somewhere in there while I'm, going through my day doing regular things. Just include that in there somewhere. That's also something that is one of these smaller tasks. And that's essentially what my short-term structure is. There's no more detail to that. I've already talked about my wake-up times, things like that. Now you might be confused because that doesn't include any of the things I mentioned to actually hit your bedtime every day, or, go to sleep and have decent sleep. And the reason for that is I used to have a very detailed plan for every single day, including when am I allowed to drink caffeine, stuff like that. And if you will, I still do have that plan. However, and this is the good news for all of you who kind of struggle with sticking to plans that are super intricate and super specific for, an extended period of time, or just in general, I just kind of got used to it. These things have become habits. So the short-term structure I just talked about is essentially all I need to stay on track for a day. Because things like drinking caffeine at the proper times, in during regular work days where I have to go to bed at regular times, eating the things I have to eat, eating them at the right times, all of that stuff, I don't really think about that, at all. I wake up in the morning, there's this whole, wake up routine I do. I don't think about that. When I wake up, I make my bed, I go drink a big glass of water, I do some cardiovascular exercise to get up and running, and then I sit down and I go to work. And these are small things that I do throughout the day that technically you might consider part of my short-term structure, but they actually aren't. They have just become habits. And the reason why I mentioned this in this video, because you might think, what does this have to do with short-term structure if it's not part of my structure, is I would recommend you start with the easy stuff, with the important stuff. You start by getting your day-to-day routine on track, because my routine is already fairly detailed, right? I do a lot of different things every day. I play and write music. I do regular writing. I work on my books, stuff like that. I read. I go to university. I do language practice. I work out. I play chess. I work on my personal philosophy. I do a lot of different stuff every single day. And I think before you do that, you can obviously, by no means do I want to stop you from doing cool stuff every day. But before you do that, or maybe if that seems like a lot of things to do in a day, go ahead and get the simple things in life figured out first. Because once you get a decent routine in regards to caffeine consumption, in regards to how much you eat and when you eat those meals throughout the day, and all of those things, and you stick to that for a while, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but ideally, with a decent level of consistency, that is going to become a part of who you are. And I kind of realized this as I was writing the notes for this video, is that these things just aren't part of my structure anymore. They don't need to be. They have become part of who I am. They have become so ingrained in my being and such a habitual part of my nature that my short-term structure actually feels very simple to me, right? It's just these tasks that I mentioned to you, when in fact there are many other things that go into making my days perfect, but I just don't have to consider them anymore. I don't have to invest any mental effort into that. Long story short, I'm yapping here. I actually want to finish this video as well. Long story short, get your sleep in order, get your caffeine consumption in order, get your water consumption in order as well, get your diet in order, get when you eat which parts of your diet in order, and all of that, try doing it for a while. And while you do that, work, obviously, right? But maybe that doesn't have to be the focus yet. Maybe get all of the other stuff in order. And then when it works more or less on its own, as it does for me, doing work is going to feel easy. Because my days are already structured for being productive. And now I can actually focus on what do I want to be productive on. So yeah, that's maybe my signing off note for this video, is try to make things that are part of your short-term structure right now habits, so you don't have to think about them anymore and you can focus on other stuff and make other stuff important and a key point of your structure. All right, that's going to be it for today. I thought this was going to be a very short recording, this second part of the video. It ended up being roughly as long as the first one I did 4 days ago. So we'll see how long this video is. I actually didn't write a ton of notes, so I didn't expect this video to be very long, but perhaps that's what the topic deserves. I don't know. If you enjoyed yourself, if you learned something, if this video provided some value to you, if you found it interesting, go ahead and leave a like. I would very much appreciate that. And if you feel like other people you know could derive value from this video as well, go ahead and share it with your friends, family, colleagues, whoever you want to do that to, I suppose. And yeah. That being said, if you want to see videos like these in the future, if you want to follow me on my journey of making these talks and accidentally recording, or not recording, rather, accidentally canceling recordings in the future, go ahead and subscribe as well. If you do that, I suppose activate the notification bell, or don't, whatever floats your boat. Yeah. And I hope you get your life structured so you can be productive regarding the things that are important to you. Don't avoid structure just because the structure pushed onto you by the society you live in or your parents, whatever, has not been to your liking. Structure itself is a great tool, very valuable. As long as you are the one controlling it, it doesn't have to be something that hinders you in being who you want to be and achieving your goals. And yeah, that's all for today, I suppose. And I'll see you around.